Hello and welcome to session 4 of 9 steps to future-proofing your warehouse. My name is Daniel Mortimer and I am the event director for CMAT Australia. These, if you haven't joined before, will take you through 9 different steps to help you look at all the different future solutions and opportunities to help you future-proof your warehouse. I'll be joined by the regular hosts of these sessions from Fuzzy Logics, Baz and Jeffrey. And this week we will also be joined by Graham Bingham from Priority Integrated Systems and John Pusek. I'd just like to start today's session by quickly talking about the announcement that we made this week as CMAT Australia. If you haven't seen, we made the decision this week to postpone the event from September this year until February 16th to the 18th of next year in 2021. This may come as no surprise to some people. Obviously, there's still not a lot of information we can have about mass gatherings and also international travel. So with the safety of our delegates, exhibitors and staff in mind, we've made the decision to move the event back to February next year. We feel this gives us the best opportunity to really deliver the best event possible for all involved. If you haven't spoken to one of the team already or you'd like to speak to me in more detail about that, please drop me an email or a call. I'll be happy to talk to you through it. But without further ado, let's get on with today's session. So I'd like to pass over to Baz from the Fuzzy Logics team, who will talk you through the beginning to the put away section, which is called Put Your Troubles Away. Baz, I will just share my screen for you and then you can get started.
Thanks, Daniel. Let's wait for that to happen. Here we go. Session 4. I can't believe we're already in session 4 out of the nine sessions that we are planning to do. So welcome everyone. As per all the previous ones, we'll do a short introduction into the actual section itself, which this case is put away. Now, put away tends to be one of the probably most underrated processes in a warehouse. I think it sort of follows on from the last one we did, which was inventory and returns. It's something that has to be done. It's something that a lot of businesses and warehouses don't really do very well. So having said that, going to the next slide for us, I'm hoping this works. If that works. Then you can move, there we go. We're on our way to that future-proof warehouse. So this week, the put away and storage side, which will be followed by replenishment and decanting next week. I'll keep this very short. So the good thing is today, we're actually being joined by Graham and John. So if you can go to the next slide for me, Daniel, just quickly. Why this is so good is Graham was kind enough to actually prepare a presentation that actually covers a lot of what we would normally do. So the normal introduction into the best practices for a section of the warehouse, Graham is actually going to cover by himself, which means that I actually get the easy bit this time. I get to talk about a little bit about technology and a little bit about put away. Graham's going to do the majority of talking today. So what is put away? Put away is nothing more than finding the optimal storage location for inventory. And optimal storage location is basically the key word here. And the other word is that conflict of interest that I put at the bottom is you'll get competing interests for stock to be put away. Now, competing interest is, if I look at a single product in isolation, I want to find the best location based on cubic utilization, strategically located close to picking or dispatch, and best suited for specific inventory requirements. And you're talking things like, temperature zones, type of pallet, type of storage equipment, specific requirements like security items or anything else. All of these come into play when you talk about put away. Now, why is this a conflict of interest? And why is this a competition? Is because most businesses don't just store one product. They store 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 10,000 or more. And every single one of those is basically fighting for the optimal location. Now, there's only one winner in this case, and it's always going to be a compromise when you start putting stock away as to who that winner is going to be. That's okay. You can go to the next slide, Daniel, for me. So hence the put your troubles away. If you do it wrong, you can end up with a whole heap of trouble. Inventory in the wrong spots, people having long distances to walk or to drive, The classic example is where we have fast-moving stock that's at the back of an aisle, or it's at the top of the rack, or it should be at the bottom. So there's some best practice tips, and Graham luckily has put a lot more on his slides. So again, I just have to do the small bits and pieces now. I think the second point for us, if no one's familiar with ABC, the famous Mr. Pareto, he was an Italian mathematician or statistician, I think it was, who came up with the famous 80-20 rule. And usually with put away, the same principle applies. So 20% of your inventory is going to generate 80% of your volume, and vice versa. If you get that right, it can save you a whole heap of walking, travel, and trouble when it comes to the phases that come after put away, the picking and the replenishment side. Fitting back into what Jeffrey started with in the very first session he did. Oh, that was one too quick. The first session, no, go back. There we go. The first session he did is accurate data. Without data, we can't put away. If we don't know how big something is, we don't know how quickly it moves, if we don't know how heavy it is, if we don't have any of the characteristics of a product, then we're going to basically put it in the wrong location. So it'd be as simple as if we receive something that's confectionery into a warehouse and it's not marked as confectionery, we store it in a normal storage location, and it turns summertime with 40 degrees inside, it's going to melt. Simple as that. It very simply comes down to feed your warehouse with the right data. Minimize unnecessary travel and touches, as always. I think one of the best ones for me is that WMS. My background actually is in warehouse management systems. That's where I started 20 years ago. And it never ceases to amaze me how many businesses don't use the logic available to them in their warehouse management system to optimize their put away. It's as simple as just setting up strategies within your warehouse to direct people to put stock away in the best possible location. Don't let people decide, let your system decide, and you can control that continuously. You know, a good trick for that one, for instance, as well, is if you have a warehouse where you've already stored stock and you're running out of space, do a simple re-put away. Scan a pallet for put away and let your WMS recalculate the best location for that stock based on the current situation of that warehouse, which will be different from the first time that pallet was stored. We're going to touch on slotting a little bit afterwards. That's a really good tool to actually optimize your storage as it first comes in, but also as you keep growing your business and keep going through the motions of selling stock, receiving stock, replenishing stock, and moving on from that one. So Daniel, can you get the next one for me? As always, we do have a little bit of technology. Now in put away, because in most cases it is a manual process, and of course we have the differentiation between manual warehouses and automated warehouses. There are only so many things we can do to eliminate the human component, and that's why I put a couple of photographs on here as well from some of our previous projects. One of the easier things to do is use AGVs to eliminate all the travel in a manual warehouse. The other one is, if it's an automated one, is to reduce your travel altogether by doing like a decant process. Now, decant is part put away, part replenishment, and it's actually going to be touched on in the next one. So bear with me when I don't talk about decant this time. I'll do that next time. But from a technology point of view, Graham and John have a couple of really good things to talk about how put away can benefit from automation. Today, I want to focus a little bit on optimizing the storage utilization and where to store stock in the warehouse using slotting tools, so to optimize storage. And there's two little things on the screen, Stop 3D and Electricity. So from a software point of view, besides having a decent warehouse management system, there are other tools available in the market that would allow someone or allow yourself to find the optimal location for stock in a warehouse. So once this initial thing's over, we'll delve into slotting a little bit. But from a technology point of view, Graham and John will take on from that. So Daniel, if you can go to the next one, because I'm running out of time already now and only on a couple of slides. So key takeaways: put away, ABC, Mr. Pareto, that's why it's called ABC, classic 80-20 rule, is the easiest way to get your put away done right. Then you always have your conflicting priorities of multiple different products wanting to find the best location, and you're going to have multiple different ones that want the same spot. Use your WMS for that. your WMS, if you have one, and even the most basic ones will have a good put away logic built into it. If you feed it the right data, if you feed it the right tools, if you set up the right strategies, your put away can actually benefit your warehouse tremendously. And by benefiting from good put away and putting the stock in the right location, all your subsequent tasks in the warehouse and all your subsequent processes like replenishment, decanting and picking and dispatch are all going to benefit from that. If you put a slow-moving item in the front of your warehouse and a fast-moving item in the back of your warehouse, it's great at the receiving time, but once it gets to replenishment, once it gets to picking, you're going to suffer. So simple tools to automate. So I'll skip to this one really quickly. I'll do a quick introduction into slotting before we hand over the reins to Graham. And before we move to the next slide, Daniel, the reason why we have a slotting introduction is because this week we only have one vendor that's presenting, which is Graham from Priority Integrated Systems. And he's been joined by John Pucek, who is one of his former customers. So we sort of marked him as a guest speaker on put away and slotting, but in actual fact, he's actually going to help Graham with some of the business cases and some of the use cases from the technology that Graham's going to present. And so with that, I'll move to the next one for me, which is slotting. Now, if you come back to what I said before in slotting and put away on the conflicting priorities and conflicting interests, this is what we talk about. So a good slotting tool looks at this, what we call the magic slotting triangle. It looks at space utilization, it looks at the picking effort, and it looks at the replenishment effort. And all of these are conflicting priorities. So I can store a pallet on the ground floor in a location, and I can store 1,000 of those, but I'm going to run out of space, which means I'm going to increase my cost per square meter significantly because I need more square meters in general. If I then look at my picking and my replenishment side, those are conflicting ones as well. I can have, a very small pick location, which is very condensed in terms of things like long span shelving and part life storage. But if I have to replenish every single location 5 times a day, then that's not the best way of using my warehouse locations or my slotting tool itself. So this is where we try and have the balance between these three. And this is only, there's a lot more involved in this when we start talking about all those characteristics for SKUs as well. But these are the main three that we talk about in terms of finding the best location. Now, Jeffrey and I and the team do a lot of slotting exercises, and a lot of slotting exercises that we do are based in Excel or using our standard analysis model, which is great. And it's great if we look at small warehouses. It's great if we look at snapshots. So then if you can click on the thing once, there we go. It's great if you need to do 4 SKUs, but what happens if you need to do 10,000 SKUs or whatever if you need to do 100,000 different SKUs? The more products we have, the more locations we have, the more difficult it's going to be for us as consultants with our rudimentary tools, I'll call them that, modeling, to find the best location for a client. And usually all the things we do are one-offs. So we do a one-off slotting exercise when we design a new warehouse and we fill the warehouse. As soon as it's filled, on day 2 or day 3 or day 5 or day 10, that situation's changed. All of a sudden we have 2 containers coming in of stock. We've sold, 3 trailer loads full of stock. My entire situation is completely different. And that changes every single hour of every single day of every single week inside my 4 walls of my DC. So what can a slotting tool do? It can actually give you an optimal location for your stock every single time. You can run this every hour if you want. You can run this every week if you want. For most businesses, it'll be a seasonal thing. So imagine someone like a Kohl's or a Woolies. If they go from summer stock to winter stock, they don't sell Easter eggs anymore. They start selling soup because it turns into wintertime. You go from soup back into strawberries and ice cream in summertime. That means that, Easter eggs are obsolete. If I keep them in my warehouse, they take up a valuable resource, which is a prime pick location, which is only needed for 4 months of the year or 3 months of the year. That's where slotting comes in. It helps businesses optimize their locations for all their products continuously. So Daniel, to the next one. I'll keep this short and try and finish in the next 5 minutes. So what's involved in slotting? The biggest thing, where the 60% comes from, is data. So I've based this on the tool that we have available called Slot3D. which is generally, goes for most of our projects, about 60% of our time is spent on just data analysis. You know, if we can't get the data right, if we don't have the right dimensions for all the products, if we don't have the dimensions of all the locations available, if we don't have all the characteristics of all the products, if we don't have any sales data, nobody can slot. We need to know if it's a fast mover, a medium mover, a slow mover. We need to know if it's small, big, heavy, lightweight, if it's a deep freeze SKU, if it's a chilled SKU, if it's an ambient SKU, if it's everything that normally goes into any warehouse design and any process, we need to know. So if I go to the next slide, Daniel, quickly, because I want to keep this short. So what can we slot? And this is an interesting one because the photograph is actually taken from Slot 3D, and it shows one of the things that we can do in terms of heat mapping for a warehouse. The tool that we have actually allows us to do three things. We can do a new warehouse in about 15 minutes. It's called the Facility Design Wizard, and I don't want to make this a sales presentation, but if someone can give us their product master and they can give us a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months worth of sales, we can actually design a brand new warehouse in about 15 minutes and actually draw it in CAD in the same amount of time. So to do quick exercises for customers when they start moving to a new facility and going, well, how big does it need to be? We can add growth into this, we can add shrinkage into this, we can do a time frame of 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, and the tool will actually help us design the warehouse, including optimal aisle widths, break points, and everything else in a small amount of time. That's not what we usually use it for. Usually what we do is it's like a greenfield or an optimize of an existing one, is if we have an existing customer and the next season comes in and you take a grocery retailer or a fashion retailer, as soon as you end up going from summer to autumn to winter to spring, every single season is a different SKU level and a different stock in the warehouse. I need to reslot my warehouse every single time. Now, we don't have to do everything at once. We can do the top 10. We can do the top 20. This is what is called an economic slotting tool, which means that it will actually look at the cost involved to move things in conjunction with the cost savings that you can have by moving something to the best location. And we can look at the top 5 that might generate a couple of $1,000s worth of savings and just move those. When the next season comes in, you do a complete reslot of a warehouse. You take all of the old ones out, move them to the back of the warehouse, and reslot the entire warehouse with new stock. Daniel, next one for me, please. And this is the second last slide. When we look at slotting, how far can we take it? Most people will do the basic stuff. They just want to know the best location for a warehouse. If you think of an actual warehouse, though, you'll notice that if you look at your own warehouse, you'll find hotspots in a warehouse. What I mean with hotspots is, going back to put away, if I have 1,000 different products and I take my classic Pareto principle 80-20 rule, then 20% are going to be generating 80% of my volume, and out of those 20%, probably 1 or 2% of those are going to be my really fast-moving ones. So 1 or 2% out of 1,000 is about 10 to 20 SKUs. If I put those 10 to 20 SKUs all together close to my dispatch dock, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to send all of my order pickers at once, every single time, to the same group of 10 locations. That means that I get one person picking from a location, and I get 5 people waiting to pick from the same location, which isn't really beneficial for any type of warehouse. So these type of tools can actually help you spread out the hotspots and mix them with some of the slow-moving stock so that you get an improvement in picking, but at the same time you remove all of your congestion at pick locations. The other one, and this is one of the last ones on the list as well, is nodes and pathways. You can actually set, and that's what's on the screen as well, you can set your travel path through a warehouse. You can put start points, end points, so you can identify where your pallet dispenser is or where you store your empty pallets. You can identify where you actually need to drop the pallets off for packing, and then you can draw pathways through the racking after it's been designed to optimize your walking distances. And you can run multiple different travel paths as well to see which one's best. So what that does, it actually reduces your travel time. And this works for both picking and replenishment. So it actually makes your picking process even more efficient. Daniel, last one, before I hand over to Graham. I think this is a very important one. And again, the photograph is from Slot3D showing you where the best locations are. Who would benefit most from slotting software? Probably the biggest four are grocery retail, fashion retail, food and beverages, and FMCG. The people that have seasonality. The people where, if you look at fashion, there's 4 seasons in a year. If you look at Zara, their season is only 8 weeks. If you look at grocery retail, Easter peaks, summer peaks, winter peaks, every single time you walk into a supermarket, they'll have different things on special. The warehouse that feeds it will have to have different things on special as well, and we'll have to cater for that too. When does it stack up? These systems will pay themselves back roughly if you can save one person. If you can save one person at $65,000 a year, that's a 1-year payback. That's how quickly you can get benefit out of a slotting system. Now you can integrate these into your WMS. You can have an automated data feed, so you can actually run a data feed from your WMS with your sales data and your SKU master into this, let it run, and actually you can feedback all of the tasks required to move the stock in your WMS. You can actually feed your WMS with the exact sequence of what stock needs to move from which location to the next one, and actually almost automate your slotting process for your warehouse. That's how easy it can be. And with that, I'll hand it over to Graham, because that's as much time as I want to give myself. Graham, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Baz. If you can move on. As Baz said earlier, and John, I'm joined by John Pusick, who was the head of solutions at Australia Post Star Trek Fulfilio 3PL, but has extensive experience in fulfillment and particularly online multi-channel retailing. And John was our customer when we installed an AMR solution for Australia Post. So I guess a lot of what we're going to talk about today will be around a quick reminder of the put away logic that Baz has covered already, so I try not to duplicate too much, and then share how an AMR or automation solution can improve the productivity and the performance of the warehouse. So I'll go to the next slide. So again, exactly the same definition. So Baz and I must have used the same Google. Really, it's the process of moving stock from inbound to the optimum storage location, and obviously safely, securely, and with a multiple of conflicting objectives. I actually, when we were asked to do this presentation, I went and asked a few operational people. So as a vendor, we are very operational biased, and we've all run and operated warehouses. So again, they kind of looked at the objectives of it, and it really was moving product with as few touches as possible. And in this ever-changing online and COVID environment, moving stock as fast as possible so that it's available for the customer to service the customer as quickly as possible. A number of WMSs are very good, and they give directed and non-directed put away, as Baz shared. The other point a lot of the operators said is, how can we reduce replenishment? How can we increase returns put away productivity? And in our current flow, we seem to check product multiple times. So we check it at receipt, we check it when we split the load down, we check it again when we put it away, and we probably check it again to make sure it's in the right location. So a lot of non-value added activity in a conventional manual warehouse. I won't go through the considerations because I think Baz has covered that off, but it is sales, service, SKUs, range, size of product, and then fitting into the optimum utilization. One of the challenges of manual and even tote bin put away is, as you can see on the picture there with the young lady, there's an awful lot of fresh air. And when we take you through our automated solution, we'll show you how that fresh air becomes very, very much reduced. Absolutely 100% agree with Baz's comment that poor slotting has a direct impact on most other processes, whether that's picking, whether it's replenishment, whether it's put away, whether it's creating congestion in your warehouse generally. So having the right slotting makes a massive difference. And we'd certainly believe put away is probably one of the most overlooked processes in the warehouse. Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, thank you, Graham. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay there. So just a bit of context at Fulfilio 3PL, we had a strategy to grow the business significantly over 18 months, in particular supporting the broader AP strategy of supporting e-commerce. To do that, there was an absolute need to look at investment in automation to be able to support the priorities of the e-commerce channel, and in particular the merchants that we were talking to. And those key priorities were around availability of stock. How do you reduce the dock to stock time when these merchants, particularly in apparel, footwear, but also cosmetics, are having product shipped in from overseas? They need to feed the retail channel, but also the e-commerce channel at the same time. You're dealing with lots of different products, lots of SKUs, often small quantities. How do you get that effectively inducted and available for sale in the shortest possible time? So even though I'll be referencing a 3PL environment, it's just as applicable to an in-sourced operation as well. But the key thing here that we found that we needed to do is to streamline the process from inbound to make that product available for sale as quickly as possible. You know, people are used to 24, 48 hours before stock is available for sale. The demands of today is more like 2 to 4 hours. So how do you do that effectively? And that's where we look to streamline the process using WMS, so that instead of doing a receipt at inbound, you could actually move the product direct to induction. You can actually do the checking and the receiving process once, straight into automation. The other thing which is also more effective than taking a considerable quantity of stock off the dock, moving it through manual pick phases, whether it's long span, tote locations, it's quite congested. Moving into an AMR situation, for instance, means that you can have these long induction runways where you could process considerable volume pre-prepared to go into an AMR system. The key message here, though, was dealing with merchants that have these large SKU range where the Pareto is not the usual 80-20, it's sometimes 95-5, just because of the nature of fashion. How do you deal with those? And in particular, return stock that comes back out of market, they want that product inducted and made available for sale. Otherwise, as typically is the case with a lot of the e-com channels, that product is scrapped. So that was actually what we were looking to solve, and we did that using the AMR solution together with modifying our WMS to make it a much more streamlined inbound process.
I think I'll add to that as well in terms of, as a vendor, when John was doing the business case, Putaway made a significant important payback, and it's probably some of the non-obvious costs such as inventory managers, inventory team, slotting, reslotting, moving product continually. As Baz said, an 8-week Zara cycle for fashion. Does that mean you have to move your stock every 8 weeks? And I've come from a warehouse operational background where that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, where people are moving products of no value simply to improve picking. And in 8 weeks' time, they've either got to move that again or handle it again. So that's probably a key message for me in here, is almost the non-value added work that's there. And then even the cost of inventory to try and maintain the WMS, so your slot sizes are correct, the tie highs are correct. And having done the job myself personally, number of times I had my product, did all my splitting, went to the location and woe betide, it's too big, doesn't fit, and I've got a problem, and I'm dealing with that through WMS, which is almost people overlook that cost and overlook the poor productivity of a standard put away function. If you can jump to the next slide, that would be fantastic. So what we're going to talk about today really is, obviously we're an integration business, so we're going to tell you the benefits of why automation helps. It doesn't suit everyone. It doesn't suit for every single market. So we're, as a supplier, very keen to make sure we only recommend a solution where it is fit for purpose. So as Baz mentioned earlier, it can be AGVs, it can be conveyor, it can be crane, it can be mini load, it can be a carousel, all forms of getting product put away automatically without someone spending 60% of their time traveling. Our particular solution where we focus is something called autonomous mobile robots, so AMR put away. And AMR, I'm sure everyone knows that, but is really a carbon copy of the Amazon Kiva style robots. So what's the benefits of automating versus not automating? It is really the product, or you take the product's put away automatically. It can be directed or non-directed. You don't need to have fixed bin sizes, so you can pot stock away to different types of slot sizes on the fly. Very little, if any, slot maintenance required, and you don't have to have fixed bin sizes. So really, in truth, the benefits of an AMR is high capacity, high cube utilization, quick and simple to install, and quick to expand, and equally quick to reduce if you need it. John?
Yeah, so and I think, Graham, just to add to that, what we saw with the introduction of AMR for our clients was key benefits across 4 areas. One of those was the reduced implementation time. So again, in a 3PL context, implementing new customers, speed to implementation is critical. Any time moving from one provider or an insourced operation to another provider is all downtime. The product's not available for sale, lost sales, and that's one huge benefit to these organisations, to be able to implement in very, very short time. 2, ability to scale at short notice, and this is not just to scale because increased SKU range. This is actually about being able to scale for promotional activities, the typical Black Fridays. It's very easy to scale the AMR, and also that particular process of being able to do a one-step induction from the inbound dock straight to the automation makes that process also a lot quicker from a scalability point of view, because you're not double handling, doing a put away and then doing a replan out of there. Thirdly, particularly in fashion, apparel, footwear, the ability to increase the speed of inducting new SKUs, but at low cost, was also very key, and we saw a huge benefit in being able to do that. Otherwise, the usual process, new SKUs come into the dock, they need to get investigated, checked, etc. Our process was much simpler than that. We just simply took the cartons, scanned and inducted the new items into the AMR, and they were ready for sale within a very short time. And the other key thing I think I want to point out here is also, with the put away function into AMR and the automation, you're not interrupting the pick process. In a manual environment, doing a put away require, trolleys and some other means of transporting the product into pick faces. You're then clashing with people that are picking, whereas in the AMR solution, of course, they're quite separate. So therefore, you can continue picking, and induction does not affect the pick process, and you don't have any loss of productivity in pickers at the same time. And they were the 4 key benefits we saw with our customers.
Yeah, and the pick slot's available faster as well. So if you pick out an old slot and you pick it to empty, you've got to manually create it in a manual warehouse, versus in a AMR solution, it's dynamic and it's available immediately. So literally, if you pick out one location, it's then available to be a put away location immediately. You can do the next slide, please, Daniel. All I'm going to do now for the next few slides is very quickly skip through. So cognizant of time, we want to make sure we've got plenty of time at the end for questions. It's just how this actually works. If you just go back one slide, please, Daniel. The message here is, for a new team member, particularly on Black Friday, where you need to ramp up, we created temporary inbound locations. So we had, pretty quickly to set up 2 extra inbound locations. The workstations are multifunctional, so they can do picking and they can do replenishment. But the time to train a team member was minutes. So it was, probably around 10 minutes per team member. So once you showed them how to do it, the screen was there, very intuitive, very quick to use. The other benefit, because we transitioned customers from a manual warehouse to an automated part of the warehouse, is we found the accuracy level significantly stepped up. So I think as we were picking out, we were finding 0 errors. So again, an unforeseen consequence that very high accuracy of pick means very low returns. And then if you do get a return, it's very quick to put it away. So next slide. The other quite unique part, so those of you that are familiar with Kiva robots and AMRs, is we think we're the only company in Australia that has color-coded bin locations. What this means is, while the screen shows the operator how to put the product away, where it should go, and makes a recommendation, they're also color-coded, so it makes it very, very intuitive and very quick to teach the people, and again, less to 0 errors. If you could show the next slide. And again, the screen, so here's an example. It can show pictures of the products if they're if necessary. It shows you how many to put in there. it shows options of potential empty locations that you can put the slot away to. It recommends a location, but it also gives you the option where to put it away. It can tell you where not to put it away. So for example, if you've got detergent and fresh fruit, it will not allow you to do that. And if you try to do it, it will stop you from doing it. If you want to put a very heavy product on the top shelf, it again will stop you doing that. And you can, with SKU characteristics, force that product to the optimum height between shoulder and knee. And the other benefit I think we found, John, from here was actually team member performance on tasks such as put away. So many people in many warehouses measure picking, but what we were able to find out is who was the fastest put away, how much time they were on task, how much time they were waiting, which SKUs were accuracy, where there was any product compliance issues, very quickly called out.
Yep, agree.
Anything else on that, John?
No.
Next slide, please, Daniel. We as a provider, we think we've got more combinations of AMR. We call them pods. Other people call them mobile shelving units. But we would have multiple different types of shelving units. So in Australia Post, Star Trek, we started off with 5 types of standard pod. What you can see in the picture here is a shoe, an increase actually in shoes. So we were able to modify the pods and literally just use shelves. We then had a customer that had jewellery, which required very, very small. So we went from everything as a pod being a single pallet with a single SKU during a promotion for very, very fast moving, to the pod that you can see there with the shoes that has 48 locations, to other styles of pods that have got north of 150 different locations, very highly compact with product in them, and again appropriate for size. So our ability to change the configuration of the pods is pretty much second to none.
Yeah, and I think, Graham, just to add to that, in our 3PL environment, looking to secure new customers and revenue growth, we were designing solutions for any particular customer that more often than not involved a combination of different configurations of these pods. And I think this is one of the advantages compared to some other goods-to-person systems, that when we looked at it, doesn't get you locked into a single tub size. And that was actually very relevant when you consider today, there are a lot of organisations, doesn't matter whether it's in apparel, but even cosmetics, and they sell a range of product sizes. This was a very cheap and effective way of being able to handle all of that, but in the same pick environment.
Yeah, you're right. So a lot of people use multi-shuttle or mini load, which are absolutely appropriate for some customers and some solutions, but they also have the disadvantage of one tote, typically one size, or you split the tote down. So, and again, handling the totes. The other thing we found was faster put away. So having operated for some large retailers such as Coles, one of my challenges when I'm picking into a tote or put away to a tote is actually being able to make sure I've got the tote there on time, I've got the product on time, and I can get that flow correctly. And making sure you don't impact service is becoming more and more critical. Whereas with an AMR, being able to put it in any location and as many locations as possible. So the other, Baz mentioned, you might want to put it across. You get congestion in a heat map. With AMR, you don't need to worry about the heat map because you can put the same product across multiple bins, across multiple pods.
And I think just one more thing is, in the e-commerce channel, returns are becoming more and more prominent, and it is actually a form of put away. It's just the configuration looks different and the profile is different than a traditional inbound. But the issue is there's this absolute requirement to get that product in and available for sale, sometimes even faster than you would have a normal induction of new stock coming into a facility. And this pod configuration means you're able to deal with, a single t-shirt, a single dress size, etc., coming back in. Whereas again, a typical GDP is going to be consuming a lot of expensive footprint to be able to handle these items, or you need an alternate manual solution.
And you're right, the system's intelligent enough to actually pick. We actually observe people putting away dresses and it coming back out within an hour. So again, if you compare that to a manual automation or even a multi-load, a mini load, I've not seen that dynamic turnaround. So yeah, people are putting a return away and it's coming back out because the system's intelligent enough to go, I need one, I've had one return, I'll empty that slot up again so it becomes available. And because the dress is the same size, colour, range, style, then there was no requirement for FIFO or turnover. So again, very, very efficient. Next slide, if you can. If you click just on this slide, please, Baz. So what we looked at in the last, in fact, can you just snip back to the last slide for me, please? Sorry, apologies, Daniel. On the last slide, what we've got here is a very conventional cubic utilization. So 2 pods across, similar to a standard picking aisle, very close together. So there's 50 mil a gap between the pods, and then the transit way between each of them. If you jump to the next slide, please, Daniel. And Daniel hits play. What this is an example of a very high cube layout, and you can have this whether it's 4, 6, 8 deep. The challenge is the deeper you go, or the more pods you have together, the more AMR moves you have. But again, where people are, the changing requirements between pick productivity, put away productivity, and space utilization, there are a number of options that you can flexibly play with in order to optimize the footprint. So next slide, please. So again, one of the benefits we think with priorities, we've installed with John's permission, we, in addition to conventional steel shelf and cardboard and 2-sided pods, we actually went out and made sure we've got Australian standard 1.2 by 1.2 meter shelving. We've also got the same configuration using, if you look on the left-hand side of this slide now, has a copy of the Kiva Amazon canvas pod, and we found in trials for this it was very much quicker to install. So we did install this within 4 weeks. It's now got 150 pods in the solution. As you can see here, very tightly stacked together, very high cubic utilization, very little space wasted between levels and between products. And the other benefit we found is actually with cardboard, less dust and less opportunity to damage the product. So, I think with this type of solution, the question for the integrator and the customer is keep being dynamic, keep innovating. The shelf pods we've talked about, and again, it doesn't have to just pick small units. So we've got a number of projects on the go at the moment, which we're working with clients where we're picking full cases. And if you look to the bottom where the cursor is now, there's a example of a inbound and outbound multi-functional workstation. So I did forget to mention all the workstations can do inbound or outbound. And we've also got, if you look on the left-hand side, an example of a mobile workstation. So again, we could set them up very quickly and then take them away. Or so they can be very high for small units or a whole pallet or anything in between to keep that flexibility. Anything on that, John?
Yeah, thanks, Graham. And probably just to add to that, I think from a 3PL new business perspective, so we were submitting proposals using AMR and pod solutions across a number of different industries, including, beverage and the wine industry, cosmetics, footwear, apparel. So, the versatility is more than just, these small tubs for small items in fashion and cosmetics. It can be used for larger items, highly configurable. You can actually then design, specifically for instance, wine or beverage, so that you can actually have the product on a slight angle and you can pick volumes out of it as an example. So it's applicable across many industries, and we found it to have a big advantage across all those industries.
Yep. So next slide, please. And again, as Baz talked about earlier around, Pareto's lovely ABC analysis, and you want to get fast at the front, slow at the back. The benefit of AMR is it's got artificial intelligence, so it will actually over time put fast movers to the front and the slow movers to the back. But unlike a conventional warehouse, it does it automatically for you, and it does it through machine learning. If you go to the next slide, we can actually, kind of show a very pretty visual of, day one at Australia Post, we randomly put product around. Over time, it learned which products are fast. But I think, as you say, with 8-week cycles of Zara and fashion today, the ability to have a dynamic pod that moves around without someone having to manually go and create that location The other point with Australia Post, when we knew we had some very high promotional lines, as we said before, we put them on full pallets. So they came in from inbound, they got put straight away to a what we call a pallet pod, and then it was available for picking immediately. Nothing on that. Okay, next slide, please, Daniel. Bit contentious, this next slide. I'm obviously from south of England, and this is very, very un-Australian. So what this is sharing is, at the moment in Australia Post, we've got the standard pod with 1 SKU per 1 location. A number of customers do not like the idea of putting in multi SKUs into 1 location. We generally have a typical rule of 3 or 4, and we have a very clear understanding of what can go together, what can't go together. So the black t-shirt and the black t-shirts are no-go. The detergent and apples are a no-go. But we are seeing some green sprouts where people are actually starting to consider putting different SKUs in the same location, particularly when they're very, very slow, and the benefit of picking is less so, and it's more about improving cubic utilizations. So those of you who are fortunate enough to go to an Amazon warehouse will absolutely see 5, 10, 15 different products in 1 pick face, and the system to allow it to be picked. No. Okay, so really almost on time, which is quite good for us. So in summary, really, the takeaway message is put away is often majorly overlooked. It is a massive benefit in anyone's business case. In addition to faster picking with goods to person, faster put away, faster processing of returns, less lost sales, higher accuracy, lower damage was a massive benefit. COVID-19 is pretty terrible impact on the world generally. For the solution at Australia Post, we're seeing some significant benefits of social distancing, because people are on separate workstations. They can clean their workstation, they can have regular drinks, they're socially isolated by being 4 to 6 meters away from each other, so definitely a benefit. Put away is clearly faster, as John said earlier, speedier. We've got significantly less damage, higher accuracy, quick to train team members, removing that 60 or 70% of travel that adds no value to your business whatsoever, less need to do ABC analysis and or slotting or information, and then really higher productivity overall. People always ask me how much is a robot, so again, without sharing commercial in confidence, but a typical solution of reasonable magnitude is circa $1 million, significantly less than if it was a fully automated crane. So this technology is fast, it's flexible. During Black Friday, we added 5 AMRs within about 20 minutes. We doubled the size of the grid when a customer came on board. So it's very quick, very flexible, both up and down. So again, these in our vision will become like forklift trucks, where people will just rent an AMR for peak. And then when peak's over, you'll de-hire it again. And the business model of priority is we've got 25 AMRs in the country that as and when peak's required, we can pop them into the system, and then when peak's over, we can pull them back out. So again, we did the Australia Post as a pilot. We believed in the system so much that we said it works, and they've subsequently gone on board it, doubled the size of it, and very much invested. Anything else on that, John?
No, I think the only thing I would just add is that in this world of e-commerce, high-speed fulfillment, that more attention needs to be paid to inbound processes than probably over the last 5 to 6 years. A lot of focus on picking, but the inbound is which is now making that product available for sale online. You think about the time it is received at the back dock now, the customers at Australia Post in the AMR system can actually release that and make it available on the website, even though it hasn't been inducted into AMR, because the time it's going to take to get it from that inbound dock now inducted and available for picking is so short, and that is actually really important in a high-speed e-commerce fulfillment environment.
Yeah, I've got one, and that really probably. Sorry, I forgot to mention. So Australia Post case study. So we started on site. So the team arrived on site on the 26th. Practical completion was a week later. System integration testing, where we did live orders, checked they were working, moved them through the system next week. And by the end of the 4th week, we were actually up and running, everything there, 100% transitioned. In fact, we've never had a mechanical issue on site at all. And ownership handed back to the operational team. I think priority do support with having what we call a production partner on site when we had that person there for 3 months, really just doing continuing improvement and operation. 4-week implementation, 400% productivity gain, better to handle peak. And in this market, people are going to want to do things faster, quicker, and for less money. I think that's it. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you. I've seen some questions come up, which I hope I've answered live. If anyone's got any questions, or hand back to yourself, Daniel or Baz.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thanks a lot for that, Graham. Really, really insightful stuff from you and John, and also thanks to you, Baz, for your introduction at the beginning. As Graham said, please put some questions. I know we've had a few in already. We've actually got, I know we've got Jeff on the line as well, so it'd be good to bring Jeff in for a few questions as well, if you're still there, Jeff. You still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
So Jeff's back from his well-earned holiday for a couple of weeks, back to the webinars. So welcome back. I know we had a question in here that you said you would like to take the reins for, so that's good. From the anonymous attendee, what percentage improvement in picking productivity can you achieve with slotting, as evidenced in existing warehouses?
Yeah, when I first read that question, I kind of thought, how long's a piece of string, really? I think Graham's come in quite bullish, and again, you know, every warehouse we walk into is very different, and there's always opportunities for improvement. Putting a number to it depends specifically on your warehouse. It is possible to get a 400% improvement, as much as it's also, you know, possible that you're already doing things quite well and there's not that much in there. But what we do say, and it's kind of a common running theme for us, is that a properly slotted warehouse will often, you know, compete with the business case for automation. So if you are able to follow the rules of slotting properly and implement them into your warehouse, you'll often find that you won't be able to really justify spending the big money on automation because you're already quite efficient. So that doesn't specifically answer the question, but hopefully it gives the anonymous attendee a bit of an idea of you know, which direction they could take in that area.
John, I think maybe if we pass it to you for this as well, because obviously you being a customer with Graham at this point, have kind of lived through this in a lot of ways. I mean, would you be able to put a percentage to how much it improved your productivity when you implemented this technology?
Look, I won't put an absolute number to it, but I will. I'll make a comment that manual solutions. So when bidding for work, so I'll draw this to the parallel of being competitive in the market. So when bidding for work, we were not competitive in the market using a manual solution. Okay, so therefore we needed to, particularly in this small pick pack, high speed, small B to B, small B, a B to small b and B to C environment, needed the AMR and that one-step flow that we talked about, particularly around inbound and then therefore the picking, to be able to lower the total overall cost per line to be competitive, right? So I think that's, you know, whilst that's not an absolute number, but I think it just shows that, you know, typically we were overpriced, and not only in Australia Post, but other organisations have been with recently, you know, 30 to 40% in the manual environment compared to a semi-automated, or where automation is part of the solution. The other comment that I would add, though, to Jeffrey's point is that, so whilst a well-slotted warehouse will also give you a cost benefit, the other thing too is a poorly slotted warehouse, and no automation, the manual one, it's can you scale to deal with the promotional piece if it is poorly slotted, and therefore your travel times are going up and you've got congestion. So that's the other counterpoint today too, is not only can you lower the cost, your overall unit cost with a well-slotted manual warehouse, but also it will enable you to scale. I've been involved in manual operations where we've had to reslot because you simply cannot get the day's work out. And I think that's the other key factor too. So cost is one element, but it is the ability to deliver service to the service price.
So being able to add at will additional capacity in terms of additional grid. So we, for Australia post that situation, you grew, which is great to be a successful customer, but double the size of the area took us a couple of days to actually double the size of that area and add more capacity in there.
And Greg, actually leading on from that, Graham, we have another question here from Markham, which says, can the person in the workstation be replaced by automated technology? And what is the current failure and mistake rate for that? I guess that's kind of a question around the automation of this as a process. How would you respond to that, Graham?
I think it's an absolutely fantastic question. And as we progress, we're doing a number of proposals now where the put away is automated. So coming off a pallet, going direct into the automation tub, automated, and the same process with picking. So going forward, people will challenge that. Again, it probably for us is becoming, it's not as obvious. So goods to person, taking out the picking, taking out the travel, very clear business benefit. I think robots aren't quite there yet, but absolutely, you definitely will get there.
So it's coming.
Fairness to Baz and the team with Sigma, you would be similar, wouldn't you, in terms of the robot picking versus manual picking?
It comes back to, if I can just jump in, it comes back to what you're picking. So the technology is constantly improving, and we do all these sessions on stuff we find online and at trade shows as well. Every time we go back and every time we open an article, every time we talk to someone, you find that it's evolved again. So what we thought last year wasn't possible is now possible. What we now think isn't possible, next year will be possible. It's just finding the right application for the right customer with the business case. So for a lot of people, the business case simply doesn't stack up yet. If you're replacing one person with a robot, then you never get the business case out of it. But if you can replace 5 people with a robot because it can work, 20 hours a day in 2.5 shifts, 5 days a week, then yes, it stacks up. But if you're picking glassware, can't. If you're picking fashion items, you probably can.
So it really depends, I guess, on the organisation. I think Michael's put an interesting comment here, and I think it feeds into this in some ways, I guess. When creating a warehouse, and I guess, Baz, this is a good one for you or for Jeffrey. In terms of an organisational setup, put away is typically a function receiving, slotting, and reslotting. Where should it be positioned?
I think, Baz mentioned, answered that pretty clearly. It definitely sits in the inventory function of the organization, and it's all about that data. And I think there's another question that's come through about how important data is, and how can you manage data integrity with constantly new products from various suppliers. It's not easy, and that's what we talked about in the first session, or the second session, sorry, which is being the gatekeeper. You want to make sure that everything that enters your warehouse, you're capturing the data, you're doing something to make your data position better, because every single time something comes into your DC, that's an opportunity. So if you, Michael, if you're interested in that topic, we could send you some more information about the inbound receiving process, where we talked about capturing data. But it is very important for both automation and for slotting. You want to have a very strong grasp on your data.
Yeah, I think that's been. I think we've really noticed over this webinar series that data seems to be the most important of the aspects within the warehouse. Making sure you've got a handle on that. Obviously, data, English, Australian.
The question around productivity is really important, because it does depend on product size, characteristics, and compliance. So in the AMRs, we tried a number of different products, and we had one customer that was very uncompliant, so no barcode, no labels, no cubic, no metric, and it was still significantly better. But when we had good data, good cubic scanned product coming into the AMRs, the productivity was significantly better. So when people say, how much did it improve by? It was for one customer 400%, for another it was significantly higher, but not at that level.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we're almost finished. I've just got one more question that I'd like to put to both you and Graham. Sorry, you and John, Graham. You mentioned at the beginning there about obviously your work that you did with Australia Post, and you showed us the how long that process took. I have to say the 4-week automation installation is pretty impressive. How did you manage that, and what were the challenges that you faced with that?
Yeah, that's a really good really good question. We had a very challenging customer in John. So John, good operator, knew what he wanted, very clear about the project and the plan. And I think about any project, we did the work up front. So all the system, all the integration was done previously. Our supplier writes their software in blocks that's plug and play. So we don't do any software testing on site. So we do it before we get to site. The equipment's pre-programmed. We get on site and we start testing in the configuration with the software. So we've seen other suppliers take weeks and months testing, getting the software to work rather than it's already working, and a bit like a plug and play. And then the guys that work for us very flexibly. So, very much it's a bit like a military operation around the clock to actually get things working. Kind of that answered the question, but yeah, so yeah, very quick. And again, that's different. Normal automation could be 3 to 6 months program. We're talking 4 weeks. So. Okay.
Fantastic. All right. Well, is there any other thoughts from the panelists before we say goodbye?
No, just like to say thank you very much for people listening and answering really good questions. Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you very much to you, John, and to you, Graham. Thanks both to our regular hosts, Baz and Jeffrey. This will be available to download and to watch again. And we'll make that available online on YouTube and through the website. The next session is in 2 weeks' time with Swisslog, so be sure to join, and we'll send the invitations for that next week. Again, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care. Thank you all.
Everyone.
Thank you.